the end of our Lumberjack Flashback series, but before we finished up, of course, we needed to take a look at one of the football program's biggest wins of the past decade. To do that, we brought in former Lumberjack quarterback Chase Cartwright. He's going to join us and look back on the 17-14 victory at UNLV in 2012. That was the first win over an FBS program since 1987. Chase, thanks for checking in with us. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Cody. Thanks for having me.
So before we kind of get to the game, what have you been up to the last couple of years? It's been about 6 years or so, like we were just talking about, since you graduated. So what have you been up to since then?
Yeah, I'll give you a brief rundown. I was fortunate enough after my time at NAU to attend rookie minicamp for the Chicago Bears in the spring of 2015. Did not make the active roster. Spent the fall of 2015 coaching high school football. And then for the next couple of years, bounced in and out of the Arena Football League, stops in Orlando and Baltimore, and then decided at that point, it was pretty much going into the fall of 2017, that I hung up the cleats and continued to coach a little high school ball, substitute taught, did a little time as a graduate assistant in the athletic department at Southeast Missouri State University, worked full-time in Arizona. I've really been bouncing around quite a bit in the last 5 or 6 years, but worked full-time here in Arizona. Most recently made a stop in the fall of 19 to Wagner College in Staten Island, New York, to coach the quarterbacks. And then now I'm back here. I started my own business here in the Valley, doing private training for quarterbacks ages 6 through college.
Obviously, a lot to do with football still. I mean, you've been playing for a couple of years and still coaching. You've stayed involved with the game a lot.
100%. Yeah, I have a passion for football, both playing as a player, obviously, and then now on the developmental side and coaching quarterbacks here in the Valley.
Awesome. So we're jumping into the game, jumping into that UNLV game. Leading into it, obviously, you had not started a game before. That's your first career start for NAU. Some things happened the week prior against Arizona State that brought you into that position. At what point of the week leading into the UNLV game did you know that you were going to be the starting quarterback?
Well, it was an interesting week of practice because, like you said, Kerry had gone down the week prior early on against Arizona State, and then obviously we licked our wounds for the remainder of that game. And going into UNLV, Kerry was kind of a game time decision. So it was a minor PCL injury from what I remember. So traditionally at the practices that we had with Coach Scangarello, we ran a pro-style offense, and he felt it was really important that the starter got the majority of the reps. So in Arizona State week, Kerry got probably 90 to 95% of the reps. I got what I got and had to be more ready mentally to play than, repetition-wise. Going into the UNLV game, it was an even split. So we didn't really know about Kerry until Thursday afternoon when the medical staff said, hey, it'll be an emergency type deal if Kerry's to play, but you're going to have to roll with Chase. So, I was told Thursday after a week of practice, splitting the reps, that I was going to make my first career start on the road at UNLV following that Arizona State game.
Obviously, being a native, of Phoenix to begin with, and played high school football down there, how exciting was it to get on the field against ASU and then kind of realize that you were going to get a chance to start against an FBS program yourself, the following week?
I would say it's probably a combination of excitement and feeling a little bit nervous. You prepare for a long time, and you don't really know what you got until you're out there in the live fire. So, obviously Arizona State was disappointing for, our football program. I think we didn't put our best foot on the field that day. And it was really nice, even in my first career start, seeing our team go out there and execute the way that they did just a week later and really turning our season around, in my opinion, in a positive direction.
So you did the UNLV. The offense does struggle a little bit to start off the first couple quarters. Just, when did you guys kind of feel that, the defense was keeping you in the game? And did you know, through even with the struggles in the first half, that this was a chance to win this game?
I tell you what, at halftime, I think we felt really good about the position we were in. Again, we were a team now with me in my first career start and going through some of those growing pains, but obviously, in my opinion, a very veteran roster. So even though I had my struggles, and I'll be the first to admit it, I didn't play well in that game. When you've got Zach Bowman and an upperclassman group of skill players and offensive line, and then defensively, the unit that we had that could keep us in games and continue to get the ball back for us, I don't think there was any panic amongst the players or the coaches. I think we knew we were going to be in that game, and it was going to come down to one or two possessions late in the game that would decide ultimately who was going to win.
Even with the offense struggling a little bit, I mean, there's no turnovers, from your guys' side. Was that something that you guys stress at all, just trying to make sure you take care of the ball and do play it safe to an extent when it is your first career start?
Yeah, I tell you what, I think one of the best parts about playing for Coach Scangarello was he really opened up our offense's perspective on how to take care of the football and how to win close games. We played really, really good complementary football, in my opinion, in those years that he was there. A huge emphasis was on, taking advantage of possessions and making sure that we were limiting the amount of turnovers. So that was something that even in his first season there, he ingrained in all of us. And I thought our quarterback room and the majority of our skill players did a phenomenal job throughout the year.
The last drive of the second quarter there, right before you go into halftime, you guys do get down the field. You put together the best drive of the game. It does end in a blocked field goal, but how much confidence did that bring, like you kind of mentioned, going into halftime, being able to kind of regroup together?
Yeah, I think it just helped us kind of settle our nerves. I mean, again, you go from, the performance we put on the field against Arizona State and how disappointing that felt to being in the game at halftime. I mean, to making adjustments and everybody, keeping their cool and focusing on the task at hand. I thought that was, a moment, again, for us at halftime where nobody panicked. We were in the game. We drove down the length of the field. We knew we could move the football. It just came down to everybody executing, and I think that's what we did a much better job of in the second half.
The first points of the game do come on a special teams play. Austin Shanks breaks a 75-yard punt return for a touchdown there early in the third quarter. I mean, it's an obvious answer, but how hyped does that get the team? And just what was the kind of feeling around the entire sideline there when he comes back after scoring that?
Yeah, I mean, you said it perfect. It really ignited our football team. The beauty of football is you can score points in three phases of the game, and we were very fortunate to have an elite defense again that got us the ball as many times as possible. And Austin Shanks making an exceptional play with that punt return team to kickstart our momentum after a blocked field goal before the half. That was monumental and helped decide the outcome of the game.
So now, I mean, at that point, obviously defense had pitched a shutout in the second half. It's 14-7. And you guys take over the ball, at the start of the fourth quarter, and you put together a 15-play drive that ends up in a touchdown. But there's a lot more to it than just kind of that simply. And so if you want to take us through that drive as detailed as possible as you can, I mean, there's a lot of big plays from a couple names that people are going to be really familiar with.
Yeah, from what I remember of that drive, I know we touched on it earlier. We lucked out one time with a penalty on a third down that helped us convert the chains. But if Modu making a good catch for a first down, Zach converting on a run on a fourth down, and then obviously punching it in later on that drive. But again, I have to give credit to our coaching staff and the game plan. We spend one whole practice day per week on those situations, on third and fourth down situations. So, you got to give a huge shout out to the guys that made the game plan, and then obviously instilling the confidence in us that, hey, we're in position to go win this game and we're going to go win it. So I think it's a huge testament to the coaches putting the trust in us and relying on us to execute in that situation.
You talked about how experienced a lot of the players in that offense were. How helpful was it for you to have someone, who had a lot of experience at wide receiver and Iffy? I mean, I think Nick Cole had a pretty big game as well against UNLV. And obviously having Zach, who's, among the best players in school history here, just to have those kind of options offensively to have helped you out.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the 4 years that I got to watch Zach, you would watch other game films and passing lanes wouldn't look as open for other teams because their running game wasn't as strong as ours. But when Zach was in the backfield, not only was it nice to kind of take a play off when you knew that you were just going to hand it to him and watch, but you knew that you were going to get a more honest look defensively because they were afraid of letting Zach get loose. So, and to touch on the other guys, you can go across the board. You've got, obviously Iffy Modu, you've got Austin Shanks. RJ Rickert had some really key catches in that game as well. That offensive line, again, they kept my jersey clean. For for a first game, having those guys in that huddle, I couldn't have asked for a better situation for a first game. I wish I would have played a little better to make it a little, we probably might have been able to win by a couple more touchdowns, I think, if I had just calmed my nerves. But I tell you what, those guys never lost confidence in what we were doing and in me, and that was a special feeling to be around those guys.
Zach does punch that in on third down, I think an 8-yard run for a touchdown. You go back and forth a little bit, but it's 14-14, and you guys get the ball back with about a minute left. And obviously being the underdog coming in, what was the mindset on that last drive? Was there actually a full intent to try and go down and score? Or were you guys kind of looking to maybe play for overtime until Zach does break a 25-yard run on the first play of the drive?
Yeah, so most 2-minute situations typically work like that. If you're backed up like we were, if you have an experienced quarterback, I think you say, hey, let's go win the game. But I won't forget what Coach Sowers and Coach Gangarello on the sidelines said. They said, look, we've done 2-minute. Again, you spend a day per week of practice on these situations. So one day you do 2-minute and coming out and, you have a plan. And we were in a tie football game. They said, listen, we're going to hand it off. We're in this game. We're not going to make the mistake and give the ball back. If we break the run, we'll get into 2-minute. But if we don't, we're going to run out the clock and we'll play for overtime. So in my head, I'm like, all right, we got to go the length of the field. Let's just see. Zach's a talented player. We got a great front five, but let's just see what happens. And sure enough, Zach does what he does, and we get 25 yards, and now all of a sudden, bam, I got to lock in because now we're going to go try and win the game. So, to share that information, I mean, to answer your question, yeah, we were kind of just saying, let's just see what happens. And, fortunately, Zach broke the run, and I think we all remember what happened following that.
And jumping right to that, you drop a personal foul penalty, I think a pass interference penalty, like we mentioned, for 15 more yards. And then from there, you hit Iffy for a 30-yard game, which sets up a 33-yard field goal. How much do you remember of that play of hitting Iffy for that? And, what just immediately is kind of going through your mind when you see he comes down with it and you guys now are in field goal range?
Well, I tell you what, again, and you have to give a lot of credit to the guys that prepared us. When we work 2-minute situations, more times than not, when you get into a position on the field where you're threatening the defense, basically getting beyond the 50-yard line, defensive coordinators are inclined to kind of try and push you back. So, Coach Gangarello had a 2-minute plan where he would call plays based on what he was anticipating, based on, the staff's film study. And we knew once we crossed the 50 against UNLV that we could expect we called a cover zero pressure. So they were going to bring 4 down and 2 more guys. So a 6-man pressure from somewhere. And that was going to allow our receivers across the board into a one-on-one matchup. And, if he had made some plays in that game and his number was called, he ran a 5-yard in. And I'll never forget, I threw it to him. And then he stuck his foot in the ground and went, instead of continuing across the field, he actually, the defensive back drove on his inside shoulder, and Iffy made a spectacular play and turned the corner going the other way and then got a block from Austin Shanks. And then it was a foot race up the sideline. And I mean, it was just an incredible play and a great blitz pickup by our front five and our tailback. And, one play like that, can put you in position to go win the game.
And that leads to Andy Wilder obviously kicking through, what ends up being the game winner. I think there's 12 seconds left on the clock. And, they 2 plays after Andy connects on the kick, but the game's over from there. And just, how are you all feeling after that? Like, as we said, it was the first win, FBS win in decades at that point. For all of you to have been a part of that, for it to be your first career start, I mean, just, what was the emotion obviously on the field after that?
Oh, it's hard to explain, Cody. I mean, you go from really getting your teeth kicked in 1 week and really feeling the lows of the low and a really quiet bus ride home. But it was the first game of the season, and we knew that our game against Arizona State was not going to define our season. I don't think we expected Shane, Kerry, and Zach to get hurt in that game. And to be honest with you, I think if Shane and Kerry play against UNLV, we might win by even more. So, I mean, we were thrown into a really, a considerate predicament, if you will. And I just I couldn't explain it because it was my first start. We were on the road. We beat an FBS team. Obviously, emotions are going all over the place, but, more than anything, I was just really proud to be a part of something like that. It was special. It was really special.
Like you kind of mentioned, early on, it obviously wasn't your best game from your perspective, but how did that game help you then in some other, comebacks and close games down the road? I mean, I know we have a couple more that happened later on in your career, and just how prepared were you, and how much did this game specifically kind of help that?
I learned very early on in college when I got there as a freshman and entered meetings with Coach Brian Lindgren, who was our offensive coordinator before Coach Scangarello got there. I didn't know much about football. It was in high school, it was just kind of throw to the open guy. And when I got to NAU, I realized that at the quarterback position, you kind of had to have a plan and you needed to know everything about everything. And I took that to heart. I knew that I wasn't the most physically gifted player or quarterback, but I felt like I was a pretty smart guy. I could analyze the game and I could develop myself, and through the help of the coaches and the players, I could become a good player if I knew what I was doing. So I always prided myself in preparation. And that's why ultimately I love coaching the game, and I've stayed around football. I love the X's and O's side of it. I love game planning. So, I really took it upon myself to study from my freshman year on. And by year 2 and 3, being the backup to Kerry and watching him go and have the success he did, I learned a lot from watching him play. And when you get your opportunity, you just kind of try and take everything that you've learned and everything that you've seen other guys do, both good and bad, and you try and make something of your own. So, obviously for a first game, I think I did a lot more of what I didn't want to do than what I did. But it did help me grow. No experience is like the actual experience where you actually play. So, I grew from that and continued to try and embrace the coaching and, enhance the chemistry with my teammates and went from there.
Thank you so much for joining us. That's all the questions we have going over the game. Obviously that season does into that. I think that triggers an 8-game win streak, leading to the end of the year. And then it kind of carries over into the next year as well. And, obviously a couple of weeks after that UNLV game, there's, another big victory at Montana. So, it did start the beginning of, a really, really successful season and a successful, group of seasons, really.
Yeah, I tell you what, that was, the last 3 years we were so close to taking it home. I felt like in the Big Sky Conference, and I don't know if any of those staff members are still there, but I keep close tabs on what's going on up north. And I tell you what, man, it feels like we're right there as a program. We've got all the the resources and the facilities and everything, and the talent has never been better. And I'm really looking forward to watching those guys finally bring it home. I think it will be, when NAU wins the Big Sky in football, I feel like it's going to be everybody that played for NAU football leading up to this wins a championship, man. It's going to be a special time in Flagstaff when we get that done.
Jace, thanks so much for joining us and taking the time to kind of reminisce back on everything. We appreciate having you.
Yeah, you bet, Cody. Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for watching. We're winding down the series, but there's a couple more, so keep an eye out for those.